Hey guys, it's your favorite sisters with the Confessions of a Reluctant Caregiver podcast. On the show, you'll hear caregivers confessing the good, the bad, and the completely unexpected. You're guaranteed to relate, be inspired, leave with helpful tips and resources, and of course, laugh. Now, let's jump right in to today's guest confession.
You know, I think you get nervous every time we come on when Andy counts us down, because I was actually thinking about going, J.
It is, all my life, I actually think I've been nervous. I'm like, what is Natalie going to say?
That's exactly what I was thinking that you were thinking.
Because I'm like, I've always been responsible, and I'm always like, what is going to come out of her mouth? And that's why I never wanted to don't tell the story, but why I never wanted to take classes with you when we were in college. I was like, I will not be associated with her.
Was it because I stuck my finger in your potatoes at lunch?
That is exactly right. And that is why we are moving.
Did, Rachel.
I never wanted to be associated with her.
I totally did. She was a senior and I was a freshman. We're going to take an extra second here, people. I know you're listening for caregiving, but we're going to take this extra second. Yeah. JJ and I went to school at Hollins. It was Hollins College at the time. We'll get past the fact that they switched over to university and a bigger diploma, but it was fine. It still works. And she was a senior. Clearly she's older than me.
Yeah, clearly.
Worked that right in.
Yeah.
And I was a freshman.
Yeah.
So even though we're all 2 years apart, we are 3 years in school.
Yeah.
And Emily and I are 2 years in school in age. And so JJ was with all of her friends and she didn't want to let me sit at the senior table.
Yeah.
And she was like, Natalie, go away. You're annoying. And I was like, no. And then she was like, go away. And then her friend, Susan Toops, if you're listening to this podcast, you know the story. And then I leaned over and stuck my finger in your mashed potatoes and ate them.
Oh my.
It's true story, Rachel.
Kids. You have kids, Rachel, and so you understand.
Your children,
I have a sister a year older than me, and we're 11 months apart. We're Irish twins, and we are completely different. We are night and day. I mean, we look different. She was more of a tomboy. I was the girly girl. And people would be shocked when they would hear we were sisters. So much so we kind of ignored each other in school.
Yeah.
Wow. I do love that.
You're just sticking your finger in the mashed potatoes, but it was a very small school, and the joke was like, did you even say hi to each other in the hallway?
No.
I don't know.
Absolutely not.
We share a room.
No, I didn't want to be. Yeah, no.
Okay. Well,
ready.
Rachel already jumped in, but I want people to know about Rachel, because Rachel is the newest sister.
Yes.
And you are going to love this story because it's super unique. It is a different type of caregiving experience, and I'm excited to have Rachel to share about it. So, Jay, let's talk about Rachel.
That's my part. I'm excited to have Rachel here with us.
Okay, keep going.
Okay. Today, guys, we have with us Rachel Shapiro, and she lives in Atlanta, Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
Hot Atlanta, with her husband and 5 kids. Right there, she's a saint.
She's got a litter of kids.
This is what she says. We run a busy household. Really? Like you run like a team. I love this.
Basketball team. All you need is a 6th man because somebody's going out.
She says they have seen and overcome challenges, almost losing a child, and now they're navigating the world of special needs and being the caregiver to a daughter, a miracle that they were told would not survive. Mm-hmm. Today, we are going to unpack here on the show, Natalie, grief, loss, what could have been, and adjusting to a new norm. And I think that new norm includes building a really full life around caregiving.
Oh, yes, because care in this case started very young. Yeah. And so I'm not going to give it away because we're going to let Rachel tell her story.
Right.
But we are so excited to have you on. And I hope you're watching on YouTube because she's currently in grass that needs to be cut. That is our standing joke. We were laughing about what the background's going to be. So if you're not watching on our YouTube channel so you can see the video, because Rachel's beautiful, but she's also got blades of grass around her. And that makes me happy. So very fresh, very summery. I'm digging it. Rachel, thanks for being here.
No problem. I'm really excited to be here. This is the first time I am sharing my story in a public forum. So some people know it just by being part of our lives, but I have not shared a podcast. I've shared glimpses, bits and pieces on Facebook and a public forum, but this is like the first time it's going live.
I love it. And you're going to be wonderful. And I think you're going to bless so many people. Your story is going to resonate with folks. And this is a different type of care. So let's start from the beginning. Give some folks some frame of reference about, because you already said you have your Irish twin. You're 11 months apart, which I love. We've had a couple of Irish twins.
I know.
Like I felt like, I love that phrase too. Mm-hmm. I like that too. And so, tell us about growing up and get us to and you met your husband and all that good stuff. So let's bring us up to speed.
Okay, great. So, I am second to oldest of 8 children. There's 6 girls and 2 boys.
Wow.
It's interesting because when I see you guys chit-chatting like this, we all get along really well, but you guys have something, pretty unique there. I love that.
Oh.
We have a sisters chat, that we all chat about. So it's fun. All the things that we understand each other in a different way,
Mm-hmm.
kind of like you do. But yeah, I grew up in a busy household. There's 17 years between oldest and youngest. We call it like the older 4 and the younger 4.
Oh.
I still have, siblings in the home, and they're growing up entirely different than I did.
Yeah.
So that's really fun. We are, connected. Some of us don't all live next to each other,
Mm-hmm.
but we try to stay in touch with one another.
Now you're from New York, right?
I am from New York.
Okay.
I tried to hide that, but 9 years living down south, people can still pick that up. So
you have not gained the Southern accent, girl. You have just got to say "us" more frequently.
I could try to say y'all a bit more naturally. It used to be y'all. Now it's y'all.
Y'all.
But my grandfather is from Augusta, Georgia. So
okay.
I say I do have Southern roots.
Okay.
So, not entirely an outsider here. So
okay.
Yeah. So grew up in New York, met my husband. We went overseas for a few years and then moved back to America and decided to plant roots in Atlanta, Georgia. So
how old were you guys when you met? Because I'm like an interrupting cow for a sec.
Yeah. I think we were I was 20. He might have been 22.
Oh,
we got married.
So
everything was a pretty quick courtship, marriage, all that stuff happened pretty quickly. So it was a good choice though. I was dating quite a bit and, happy where I landed. So, we eventually moved down south and planted roots here, which, never thinking as we get to the later part of the story that we're without family here, living in a beautiful community in Atlanta, Georgia. But, at the time, living near family wasn't really a big part of, what we were looking for.
Yeah.
And even now it's okay, but kind of coming into the story later on, it would be helpful to live near family.
I could see that.
Yeah. Yes. So we moved to Atlanta, Georgia 9 years ago. We had 1 child at the time, actually. I had a 2-year-old. And while we were living abroad, we actually started struggling with secondary infertility, which is kind of the first part of my story. And came to Atlanta, started going through IVF, all the treatments. And eventually 2 years later, I had identical twin boys. So, I have 2 sisters who have their own set of Irish twins, which has its own set of struggles. You're pregnant while you're having another child.
Yep.
I have the true twins, but in some ways, I think they had it harder because it's like you're juggling different stages.
Yeah.
We did everything at once. So thank God I was blessed there's a 4-year gap between my oldest son and my identical twin boys.
Okay.
We were very grateful. And while we were doing this, we were planting roots, getting really involved in the Atlanta community.
Mm-hmm.
My husband's a rabbi and we were here tasked being in Atlanta, which is building connections with anyone in Atlanta. And it still is a beautiful community and journey. And we're really grateful for all of that. So that's how, and it takes us a bit forward. When we were ready to kind of have another child, I went back for another IVF transfer. And, thank God became pregnant with my first baby girl. So
you had all boys to this point.
Yes.
So you'd had all boys. Now let me ask you this, because you're working too, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so I think that's important because I'm going to every now and then interrupt you and be now you're working, and tell folks sort of your background on what you do for work, because that's not like it's easy peasy.
Yeah, so I could sidebar. It's funny because my husband just ran into someone and they know I'm really involved in the community work and they know that I have a special needs child at home. And I just came back from a work trip and my husband was saying, "Oh, my wife is away." And they said, "Doing what?" And he's like, she works full time. And they're like, no, I thought she was a primary caregiver, like as her sole role, which is very understandable. But we'll get into it. What I do now, why I hold on to my job, and I think as long as I can. I love working in any case. So what I currently do now, I've been in marketing my entire career. I started out in fintech and then went into risk management and supply chain tech. And I always wanted to go into healthcare, but it just never happened for me.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was recruited by the company I work for now, which is a home care technology company. And I run the marketing for them.
Yeah.
So there's two software platforms. One is CareTime, which is a home care agency management platform. We do billing and take care of all the home care ops. And then Ally, which is another similar platform, but for those working in the nurse registry community with 1099 caregivers. So I'm really busy, and I joined that industry. I'll say this bit for later, kind of how it all came together.
Yeah.
What happens next. But I do work from home, which is a big blessing. But I've been working all this time.
Yeah.
So let me ask you, you decided you wanted that fourth child. You get pregnant with the fourth child.
And it's a girl.
It's a girl. But did you always know you wanted a big family? You come from a big family where you're like, yes, you and your husband both. We want 10 kids.
I think on the first date with my husband, he said, like, I want 10 kids. And I'm like, that's fine. But like, can we take it like one at a time? And I think he shared this, and he ended up writing a book about our infertility journeys and sharing about that publicly, speaking across the world, actually, in many different forums. So it's just interesting how that came into play. I say I take it one at a time, but I had twins, so everyone laughs at me. But even till this day, I say, we'll see what happens. I feel very blessed, and we'll see.
I love that. So you go and you get pregnant and you have your little girl, and let's keep going.
Yeah. So, I had my girl, and there were some complications throughout the pregnancy and while giving birth. But kind of fast forward a year and a half, a bit before her second birthday, after meeting most of her milestones and really doing very well, a bit before her second birthday, she seemingly fell. I was sleeping late that day, came down. She fell, but kids fall all the time. I had twin boys. Again, remember that.
Oh, yeah.
She fell and was acting weird. Her eyes were doing weird things. She didn't really want to eat. And we put her to bed, and she was just acting weird. A parent knows when something's off. Mm-hmm. And we actually had a doctor at our home at that time. He's like, you really should take her to the hospital. And we said, yeah, like, we know. So we took her to the hospital, and they did all the scans, all the things, and they said, we're treating her for concussion. And at this point, I knew nothing about anything medical. Like, you trust doctors. And again, maybe that was the right call at that point. That's okay. But I didn't even have the awareness to ask or pry into different things because I didn't really know much.
Right.
But they kept her there for 2 days for a concussion. And actually, thank God I was working, because I remember working it might have been a Sunday, which is also, I do tend to work a lot, but it might have been like 10 or 11 p.m. at the hospital on a Sunday night or Monday night. I forgot if it was a work day. And I was just really tired. I said, you know what, I'm going to spend the night here. We lived 5 minutes from the hospital. I said, I could have gone home, but I actually decided to put my laptop away and sleep on the bed in that room. And in middle of that night, she, wasn't breathing well. People ran in. They thought she was having a seizure. And I was watching my child seemingly have a seizure. I didn't know anything. It happened again an hour later, and it was, I guess, coded in their language. They kicked me out of the room. Now I know so much more. I've been in hospitals for months. I'll share what that is. But at this time, I'm like, what's going on here? This is what you see in the movie. They're like, get the mother out here. 10 people run into the room. And they don't really know what's going on because her sats are just dropping. So, in retrospect, and what I found out later, how they tell people when you see people, older people having a stroke, they do like a weird thing with their mouth and like twitching. My daughter was doing that in front of my eyes. I didn't know at the time that it was a stroke. We found out later, but she was stroking. They thought it was a seizure. Again, not blaming anyone, but I didn't even know a child could have a stroke at this point. Like, I knew nothing. So, throughout this whole night, we didn't keep our cell phones on back in these days because life was simple. Life was good. And I tried calling my husband like all the time. He's not answering. I'm panicking, pacing up and down the hallways. And it was really bad. It was really, really bad. We didn't even know what was going on at that point. Yeah. just to pause here, I finally got hold of my husband and I said, we throughout in our life, we've said like, it's bad. And I'm like, how all those times you said things were bad, those were really not. Like now it's really bad. Like come to the hospital immediately. So he found arrangements for for my other children at home, rushed over to the hospital, and we went through our day. They didn't know yet she had her stroke. So much so that my husband was teaching a class at 7:30 that night, and our doctor calls and says, get to the hospital now. And we still didn't know what was going on. Like we were going on with seemingly our regular day. Like my husband was teaching a class and we get to the hospital. Our close friends meet us there. And they say she had a stroke. It's devastating stroke. Again, 2 days prior, I have pictures of her that Friday holding onto a ball in therapy with the biggest smile, and they don't know what happened.
Wow.
They basically tell us she is not going to make it. And again, for those who have been through these sort of scenarios, they like to prepare you for the worst, but no one was giving us any glimpse of hope. It was a really, really bad stroke. And they all said like, she's going to succumb to the pressure in her head at some point. Like it's going to happen.
I'm gonna take a pause here because I'm gonna hit that. We've hit that little mark, and I want to take a break for just a second.
Yeah.
Because I think that's the right spot.
Yeah.
That people have not given you. There's no hope, and I can't even imagine that as parents of a 1.5-year-old, like not understanding. So let's take a break right here.
Yeah.
It's a new day for getting older and a new day for getting help along the way with CareScout. Say goodbye to aging care that makes older adults feel invisible and family caregivers feel alone. Say hello to a better path to finding, choosing, and feeling confident about aging care. Whether you're trying to understand what type of care and which supports may be right for your loved one, or you need to find quality care now, CareScout can be your guide. Learn more at carescout.com.
CareForward is a technology platform that connects volunteers with seniors, the disabled, and those with chronic or complex health conditions, offering support like transportation, home visits, and more. Details online at careforward.io.
All right, everybody, we are back here with Rachel Shapiro, and her daughter has had what they found out to be a stroke, and she's basically been told that she's not going to survive. And Rachel, she's in the hospital. You guys have been given this news. She's in the hospital for 5 months, though. Tell us when it changes, because you all also get training, because now they're saying, okay, you have a child with special needs. Tell us about that 5 months and what pivots in there.
Yeah. So it was a long journey from the moment they told us she had a stroke. So she was intubated automatically. And we kept hoping that she would get extubated. And taking home a child on life support is dramatically different than taking home a child not on life support. And you talk about being a reluctant caregiver. We were really reluctant with the trach, the vent. We were pushing it off, not just because we were clinging on to hope, but that meant so many things for our family, right? Like we wanted her home, but what did that look like?
I want to interrupt for a second. She's going home on a trach, and I would feel super intimidated by that. And you're right. You've got other baby nuggets in the house. You've got 3 other kids that are in the house, and you're having to navigate. I can imagine it being scary for the boys, even if they'd come visit her, right?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so there's different aspects to that. Not to jump all over the place, but when they brought in a trach for the first time to the room, just to show me what it looked like, I was like, I can't even look at that. Like, forget about touching it. Like, I just can't. And that was the emotional part of me. Like, I can't even think about learning how to do this for my child because it was so overwhelming.
Yeah.
Now, probably most of your listeners are going to watch, or, whoever's watching this will think that this is crazy, but we forgot the part where we had about 6 weeks, 3 weeks where they didn't know if she was going to survive. One day a nurse said, "Oh, you're still here. I didn't even think you were going to survive, but it means you're still here." And that was the first part of realizing like we survived, because none of the doctors really told us that, which is, it's okay. They had to prepare us for the worst. So thank God she survived, but we were still in so much of a limbo till she ended up going into rehab for her last, portion of the stay there. But I decided at that point, along with my husband, that we were experiencing so much loss and we wanted to rebuild. We decided to go for another embryo transfer during this period.
Right in the middle.
Yes, in
right
the middle
of all this chaos.
Her stroke was in June. I think I went for my transfer in August. And I talk about this. The fertility clinic was right next to the hospital. And I went, my day was spent in, the mornings or whatever, going in and out of those hospital, the car garages. So I would go, I say, like, I had an analogy, like up and down I go, like to visit my daughter who is hopefully on the mend, and then up another up another car ramp. I'm trying to build a new future for ourselves.
How old are you at that time? I didn't mean to interrupt you. What's the family dynamic there? How old are you and how old is everybody else, the littles?
At that time, my daughter was really just a month shy of her second birthday.
Mm-hmm.
My twins were probably almost 6,
Mm-hmm.
and my older son was, 9.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
We knew we wanted more children, and I know there are a lot of people out there who may have special needs children. There is something about having a child after one that has special needs. It gives you a lot of positive energy, just comfort. There is a lot to that.
Yeah.
But we were really in the thick of it.
Yeah.
And then what happens next, just to kind of answer your question about the training, I was throwing up in between the training, falling asleep. I mean, that was a lot to take home a child with life support, with a trach event. You need to really go through rigorous training. And I'm thankful for it because we know what we're doing. She's a bit more stable now, but we've had to save my daughter's life together. So, we went through that. Thank God I was pregnant when we brought her home. We brought her home when I was a few months pregnant, after a 5-month stay. And what that meant for the siblings was we were just going to continue as normal, right? If anything needed to be different, we let them know. But I think for my older boys, they just wanted to know that mommy and daddy were sleeping at home at night. That was their biggest. We took turns sleeping in the hospital. There was a lot of concern around that when every single night, where were mommy and daddy?
Yeah.
But once we were all home, it's like they almost didn't care as much that their sister looked a bit different. Obviously, I'm sure there was a level of grief that came along with it because my older son used to play along with my daughter, but we were all home. They just wanted us to be home. And for them, that meant stability. So you probably think we slowed down in terms of our community work and hosting and everything. I kid you not. I don't know how we had the strength to do so, but it gave us the strength to just continue, right? We had this child who needs special care. We had to continue doing what we loved despite it all. And we really did. Nothing stops us. I mean, we have a monitor that we bring up and downstairs if we need to watch her. I run up and down. It's just a full life. And thank God I gave birth to my baby girl. She just turned a year. So just bring everything full circle. We'll dive into more of the, caregiver aspects, but that's kind of where we are today.
Isn't that so? I know that our listeners are probably have like 1,000 questions because I know I do. Like it's, how do you make that decision? Because we've had other folks. So like we just had Jess. I love Jess plus the mess.
Yes.
Jess chose to have a son, more children after her son, Jessica Pate did. I think about that. And I think most people would think, oh my gosh, this is so hard. How can you have more children? And here's the other thing is that when you see Rachel on the YouTube or you see her thing, Rachel looks like she's 20 now. Yes. She has been given the gift and blessed with youth. And so you would think, how is this sweet young lady
the mama of
she is 20, but I'll take it.
Yeah. And girl, we all take it. We will always take it. But it's like, how do you have the energy? And I hear you just saying it was so important to reestablish a new normal and making it normal, like truly having normalcy for your boys, for the kids, and incorporating that. Yes, yes, our life is different, but it can also still be good and full. I love how you said we're going to have a full life. It was so important for you and your husband.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I don't want anyone to think I wasn't taking any help. We had meal trains for months. I mean, really, there was a lot of support that we needed from family and friends to get through this. Picking up my kids from school and all those different aspects. But once we were all home, right, the stability just meant a lot. it meant a lot to everyone. So I think for myself, for my husband, and for my family, losing ourselves and having to give up the things that we love, and our family looking so different, right? In terms of us always having an open household. If my boys would have felt like we are not doing that, we're stopping everything now, that would have been a dramatic shift for them. And this has kind of been our mentality. It's like when life gives you lemons, you just make lemonade. We don't say that often in the home, but as I'm thinking about that now, that's kind of what we have done.
Yeah.
Right. Maybe family vacations are not us all going together anymore, but my husband takes the boys to make sure that they get that sort of excursions that they can. Right. I can't go with them and everything now. My daughter is, it's hard to travel with her for sure. I don't want to take her on a plane right now. And things look different, but we make sure that our boys still feel like, the older ones at least, because they're the ones that are mostly impacted, that they feel like they're living an everyday regular life. Even though it might look different than their friends in some ways, they're a bit more spoiled in other ways than their friends. And I want them to know that they still get vacations, they still get to go away, they still get to do that. So, and they love hosting and, having that community involvement. So it would have been too much of a shift for all of us. I remember when I spoke to one person when I found out that my daughter was going to be vent and, in that type of medical fragile situation, I spoke to one person and she texted me back, "I gave up my life." This was while my daughter was in the hospital. She said, "I gave up my life. I gave up my job. I gave up everything." And I turned to my husband Friday and I said, "This is horrific. Like, this can't be us." And we somehow just made a decision, not necessarily because of what this person said, but that won't be us. This was years later. I don't want to use the word bitter because you're taking care of her child, but it's hard when you lose yourself because of different things that happen to you. You're in control of your own destiny, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's made me stronger for it, knowing that we can do all the things we love, despite how I have this, new aspect of caregiving in my life, and, could talk more about that.
Wow.
I know. I told you she was a powerhouse.
It's not slowing me down.
I feel sleepy right now and not sleepy because I'm bored. I mean, like, I am exhausted for you because you work. You and your husband are actively engaged in the community, and I'm assuming, honestly, the whole family is. Like, at some level, I'm sure the boys are as well. I like how we've got a separation of age. Like, you got the boys because they're older, and then the girls. And you're doing all the things. And, I think it's important. We've had other guests who come on and they talk about, like Jessica Pate talks about, she and her husband have always split vacations because their son can't go. Really hard. And it's very hard. And it is an accepted thing. And the first time they have gone out, they went on an extended vacation because he's older now. And they went on an extended vacation for the two of them. But that was very nervous. I remember she was saying, "We're getting ready to go on that. It's the first time we're doing that." And I think let's go into relationship. Let's go into yours and your husband's relationship. Yeah. And I mean, like, I know that something that was really important to you is that you and your husband don't lose your relationship because of care. And I think this is not just because you have a special needs child. You've got a litter of kids. I love saying a litter. You've got 5 kids, even if none of them were even if you didn't have a special needs child. That is, for so many parents that I see, because I don't have kids, but I've seen so many parents give up so much of themselves and themselves, what their things are, things that they enjoy, to sacrifice. And I hate the word sacrifice because I don't think it should be a sacrifice. I think you should be able, how can both things be true? But how do you, and then their marriage is affected by that. And then I think it's why a lot of divorces come after kids go to college or go on, move out of the home. How have you and your husband been able to maintain, let's start with your all's relationship?
Yeah, it's a good question. I will say that it is really nice that he's not out of the house, at a 9-to-5 job outside the home, because he's around more. So even if we are not necessarily spending time, right, I'm working, maybe we say hi, we pass the monitor one another if a nurse doesn't show up. But we see each other a lot, which I know some couples are not fortunate. They're all running around doing what they need to do.
Right.
I would love to say that there's a secret, and I would love to say that we are able to go on date nights or go on vacation together, but we cannot, because of, lack of care. I will say the fact that we are both building something together, we'll host an event together. We are contributing together in that nonprofit community sense. We are building a family together, but we're also building something else. And I think that gives us both a commonality and a goal. We'll create an event, say, what do you think of it? We also have a team who works with us, but I'm kind of the co-founder. So, he relies on me to kind of keep things in balance. So it's really nice in that regard. So I think we're building two different things. And then as it relates to the caregiving, when it does come to the tough things of, it's only happened a few times, but like need to save my daughter's life together. It's like, wow, we're doing something like wow together. Like we're not doing all the frivolous things that, in life, but this is really meaningful and impactful. Now, in terms of like the nitty gritty of the stress, right? Not getting into the relationship, that can be really, really tough. And at the beginning, my husband and I were processing the loss, right? We speak about, you touched on the grief and loss.
Yeah.
I was mourning the fact, and I say this candidly, when my daughter had her stroke, we live in Georgia. I had bought such cute Georgia peach swimsuits for my daughter that summer. They were waiting at home. And I was mourning the fact 2 months later that she didn't get to wear those that season. Yeah. Even if she had a miraculous cure the next day, she didn't get to wear those. Like I had to try to return them, or I couldn't look at them, right? She had a whole cute, section of clothing to wear that season, and she couldn't wear that. So I was mourning while my husband was like going through a different sense of grief. So that's something that we had to address. My husband speaks about this when he discusses the challenge of like fertility, right? Couples process things so differently, and just how do we maintain the relationship? I think it's the communication of how are you processing this? It might be really hard for me that a nurse didn't show up that day, but hypothetically for my husband, he might say, okay, let's just go with the flow. We'll do what we need to do, because he might be more matter of fact about it. So it's just the communication aspect. Like one thing that's hard or a struggle for me might not necessarily be a struggle for him.
Yeah.
And I think that's just what helps us kind of stay true to ourselves and our relationship, because we'll continue to have ups and downs in this journey of caregiving, and we need to prioritize ourselves. And hopefully we'll get away soon. Working on that, but otherwise we try to find time in the home, or again an evening out, even though it's not like some large vacation.
Yeah, but I think that's important in staying true to your relationship. And I appreciate you saying it's not like this secret sauce, because honestly, if there was a secret sauce, you'd just write a book about it and go on the Oprah tour, girl.
You'd be selling it.
You'd just be selling it. You're a marketing guru, so we'd just be selling it.
Yeah.
We're going to take a break, because then I want to come back and I want to talk about the boys. And we'll be right back.
Looking for care in all the wrong places? Try CareScout. Our Care Finder helps you locate long-term care providers in your area who are committed to quality, person-centered care. With CareScout, you can also order a personalized care plan created by a licensed nurse just for you. So say goodbye to a path of aging care that's nothing but confusing, and say hello to a more dignified journey, including providers who see you as you and a plan for quality care you can feel good about. Learn more at carescout.com.
CareForward is a technology platform that connects volunteers with seniors, the disabled, and those with chronic or complex health conditions, offering support like transportation, home visits, and more. Details online at careforward.io.
All right, everybody, we are back here with Rachel Shapiro, and we were talking about caregiving and how it impacts families. And we've talked about relationships with a spouse. She has 3 older boys than her daughter, and we want to talk about them and the relationship with the boys. And then you also have that younger daughter. I guess my word would be, how have you adjusted them to your new norm? Like, what is the new norm? How has this impacted them and your relationship with them?
Good question.
Yeah, it's a good question. So for better or worse, this whole stage really went over my twins' head. Everyone kept telling me, do you think your children need to speak to someone? And I was very open to it, right? I really am. But seemingly, like, the twins were, I want to say 4 at the time, and they just cared about who was feeding them, who was clothing them, who were they playing with that day. They didn't really understand what was happening. Mm-hmm. And it kind of went over their head. So I don't know that they forgot what the norm was before that. But now, again, they're still day to day as they're going to school, they're playing with their friends, they're getting their presents, they're getting their food. Like, yes, they see aspects of our lives and we have a nurse in the home, but it might sound crazy, but it's not really impacting them in the way that a 6-year-old, they're almost 7 now, what they really care about. My older son, he just cares about me making home cooked dinners for him. Like, I'm telling you, he's such a foodie. And all 3 of my boys, actually, when Mother's Day comes around, it's thank you for making me dinner. So maybe that's the trauma they experience from all those meal trains and all the delicious food other people made for us.
Yes.
But they're so appreciative, like when I make them good dinners. You know how important it is for kids when you come home, you know, at the end of a long day, they just want that home cooked meal. So I think for them, like if any of that was out of the norm and they felt like we were running to the hospital, I try to communicate with them. If we have an appointment that's in the hospital, if there's a chance we might be running late, or if they might have someone else pick them up, because that's important to them. They don't want to be surprised. But other than those aspects of, again, getting to school, coming home, who's babysitting them, they feel it, they sense it, but we take care of my daughter. They're not involved in the care as much. And they trust that, you know, the kids trust us that we're taking care of their sister well. So I don't know.
No, but I hear you saying things, Rachel, that actually, so especially with them being young and developing brains, we know brains that, especially as they're developing, chronic predictability. That's what predictability, routine, and that's what I hear you saying that your boys thrive off of and ask from you in their own way, not verbally probably, but you know, and you're there meeting that need. And it's not tangible things. It is time spent with, or I need to know who's going to pick me up so that I don't have to be scared that, you know, all of a sudden it's really about saying everything's okay.
Yeah.
So, you know, and you won't
kind of did. We didn't, if we came home, if we were walking around like, and that's what happened, actually. I forgot to mention this. When we found out that my daughter was likely not going to make, when they told us, we had to explain to my son, and we did allow my son to come to the hospital. They made an exception for him to be allowed into the NICU to potentially say goodbye, if that would be the case, right? We had to think about all those things. And we were crying a lot, rightfully so, but they made him sad. Once we stopped crying, I don't know when that happened, but I immediately saw a change in him. He was reflecting what we did. And I think that's what happens now. Yeah. If we were walking around nervous, if something were going on, he would sense that. And I think parents can infuse confidence in their children despite what is going on. And sorry to cut you off, but that was an important point that I missed earlier.
Yeah. Which no truer words, though, Rachel.
Yeah, that they reflect what you do.
I think that is probably the biggest takeaway is how, and it's hard for the adults if you think about it. Like, I can only imagine, and really not even, but the emotions, the range of emotions that you're going through, and you are also pregnant at the same time, so you get all the extra hormones. You're welcome. And but all of that, and thinking, okay, the little people are looking up to me, and they're looking for direction that everything is safe and secure.
Yeah, that's what kids want.
And that is exactly what they want. And that can be hard. And I think about it like, for when Jason was sick, or whenever we have things that are going on with mom, like our mom can be like, everything's going fine. And then it is full on hot mess and 911. And then we're back again. So it is this ebb and flow that children have to have built resilience on. And they learn that from their parents.
Yeah. So I want to talk about you, Rachel. Are you okay with that?
Let's talk about Rachel.
Let's talk about Rachel. So I know you're a person of faith, and sometimes I would say to myself, we've asked people, do you say, why God? Or do you say, yep, I'm on this path and there's a reason? What is your attitude towards this? And what have you kind of done with
your conversation with God?
What's your conversation? Yeah, I have conversations all the time.
Really great question. So I was just telling the story over to someone else yesterday.
Yeah.
But it's something that sticks with me. And I know not everyone reacts like this, but as we were in the hospital, found out that she likely was not going to make it. My husband and I were crying. It was obviously a hot mess. I remember saying, how can I even be upset at God when I have 3 other healthy children and a wonderful spouse? And I remember thinking in that moment, I have friends who are not married. I have friends who are maybe not married to nice men. I have friends who don't have any children, and I have three, and I have a job and a career and a community. And in that moment, I was like, how could I complain to the person who's giving me all the great stuff when I have all that stuff and be upset for the one seemingly bad thing? Now, I do understand at a higher level, this happened for a reason. I will never know exactly why. Yeah. I kind of get to I think about things in a bit of a morbid sense, but when this happened, we were supposed to have a grand vacation to a couple of countries that summer. It was supposed to be a big family vacation, and we had to cancel that. But I said, you know what? I'm sure she saved our life in some way. It could be a bad accident was supposed to happen. And this is how I think. I know not everyone does, but I have to convince myself that it is for a good reason. And the only way I could think about it being for a good reason is she took the hit for all of us. Like, something might have potentially bad happened, and she saved us all from going on this vacation. I know that might not be the reason, but there's some greater reason why she is now a special needs child in our life, and we lost, her. She's still in a minimally conscious state, from a neurological perspective. She has severe brain damage. She's not with us in the same way that she was before, and I won't know the reason why, and I'm okay with that. I just know it's for the good. So I didn't ask why me, because otherwise I would have been asking why me. Why did I get to get married? Why did I get to have a spouse? Why did I get to have 3 children? And I know it's a really, a certain level of belief, but it's how I coped, and maybe that was ingrained in my upbringing.
Yeah.
Had other things happen to me in my life, but this was a pretty big one. So that's kind of what I was going through at that point.
I really appreciate that, Rachel. And it's really the stories we tell ourselves. It's like when you see other people's lives. I can remember sitting there on the 14th floor in New York, and I was feeling, every now and then I'd felt like a little bit like Rapunzel, like I was in this white tower and I was kind of held hostage because I'm in this great city and it's so great, and I'm thinking whatever. And I felt like a hostage, like I had no control. And so I would look out the window at all the other high rises, and I would make up stories for the people. And it's the stories that we tell ourselves. And I would always try to make them happy stories. But I agree with you in the sense of, I think it's, what do we tell ourselves to cope? And I don't think it's that it's wrong. I don't know that it's not about being right or wrong. Mm-hmm. It's about how did that help you get through that time? But she was meant to be in your life exactly the way that she is. And she'll be there exactly the amount of time that she's meant to. And we're big believers in God as well. And his plan is perfect. And so she's meant to be here, because otherwise you wouldn't be here with us.
Yeah.
I think about things like that.
Yeah.
So
sharing your story.
Yeah. And so let's talk about the care piece of it, and how care, because I know we're getting close to our time. It's time for sister questions. I can't even believe that, but I love Rachel because she's a sister.
Yes, fantastic.
What does care look like for you guys now? I know that it's probably evolved, and because you said that you had a nurse. I caught that for a sec. So you had a nurse that provides support to you guys. What does care look like for you guys?
Yeah. So I'll dive into that, but I just wanted speak about the reluctant caregiver piece, right? I spoke about the fact that I kind of coped and just did as I needed to, but in the hospital, when they were training us, I kept saying I didn't sign up for this. I didn't want to be a caregiver. I'm in business. I'm I was not the compassionate, empathetic, let's be a nurse, save the world in that aspect. I wanted to be in business, but in healthcare, that aspect of it. But this was not for me. And I kept telling everyone, I did not sign up to be a nurse. I didn't want this in my life. I consciously made a decision to not go to medical school or to become a nurse. And here I am being faced with needing to get oriented with all these things. Mm-hmm. Just kind of touching on the belief. Someone said to me, I told them, I didn't sign up for this. I did not sign up for this. I went around saying this for at least 2 weeks. Someone said, there's actually a concept where your soul up in heaven, before it comes down to earth, gets to pick its package and of life, what it looks like. And guess what? Your soul actually did pick this one. So when you go around saying you didn't sign up for this, somewhere along the line, your soul picked this package of the family that you have and the husband and everything. And after that, I stopped saying it because I kind of knew they were right. I was like, okay, I give up. I surrender. So
it's my package.
It is true. So, I don't disagree with that. Keep going.
Yeah. So with the care, we were set up with nurses. We went through a lot of nurses at the beginning. we learned different things. We needed someone who was able to get on the floor and be physically active with my daughter, lift her up. We had a lot of stairs in my home. Did we have nurses who were okay with that? That might have meant different levels of physical, fit levels or whatever. There were a lot of different identifying criteria that we kind of learned along the way after nurses that were not working for us. Unfortunately, it was a pretty rocky start. Then we found an angel nurse who came. She had her own journey and she joined us for, it was interesting just how her life aligned to kind of fall into our lap. And she was with us for quite a bit. Then she had to leave for personal reasons. And, we've always had different nurses along the way. We are now in a bad rut. We've had some different nurses and there's a lot of different personalities and have a busy household. We are around. I like to think that we provide a good environment for nurses, but there's a lot of things that come into having someone in the home.
That's right.
And even though you could think it's going well, I won't share too much, but I've gotten emails of crazy scenarios of one nurse not liking that another nurse changes a diaper or PJs. It could be as basic as that. And I'm caught in the middle. And I never realized how much monkey in the middle I'd be doing between nurse A, nurse B, nurse C, the home care agency provider. And that's what's draining. Talk about how I do everything. That is what drains me most.
It's a staffing company. You are a boss.
Even though we have a home care agency, who works with us, it's just hard because I'm in the home and I see the things they say. And there have been comments about things my kids have been doing, which hurts, which I don't think it was right that they said it. I'll defend my children. But different things that one nurse might have taken a different way, different things that might have not make them feel comfortable in the home. So it's a lot of navigating that. We are in Georgia, so we do not get 24-hour care. Even though she's on life support, which is a bit of a challenge. So at night, it's up to me and my husband. He's in charge of my medically fragile daughter's monitor, and I'm in charge of the baby monitor. So that was also a harder postpartum because normally I could have his health with baby, but he never knew if later in the night he'd have to get up to alarms from my daughter just disconnecting herself. Nothing dramatic, but he was he still till today, we're each in charge of our own, we have twins again, right? We were each in charge. He took care of twin A, I took care of twin B. That's kind of how it went.
I like that.
So we have that now. And with nursing, I go through stages where I'm very, very blessed to be fully staffed. And then there's always those, even if I'm going through a bad day, there's always those nurses that surprise me and say, you know what, you have a party or event or a wedding you need to go to. I'll come that day and take care of it. There are really compassionate people in the industry. Those life-saving nurses who come to my home and take care of us when we need to, when we need it most. But there's a lot of days where it wears you down. And, I like to think, we are appreciative of all the caregivers out there, but the clients like myself just really need some extra support to lean on, whether it's a, caregiver, for you, what you do for your mom, all those other people out there. I think it's not just your own emotions, but it's the emotions of dealing with the scheduling and who's showing up and are they canceling today and some passive aggressive nature. There's a lot that goes into it. It's really heavy for me at times.
Yeah, I could totally see that.
Yeah.
Well, and let me ask too, and we are pushing up against our time, so I want to be mindful of that, but I don't really care. My standard answer, but then I don't care. So do you have a combination, well, you clearly have a combination of paid and unpaid caregivers to provide support because she needs additional support and nursing meets that need part of it. Would you still say that you have folks from the faith community, from your community, where's family? Are there folks that are coming in periodically to help you guys I don't know the answer to it. And it's not to call anybody out, but do you have other folks that are also helping you guys to try to navigate this as well? Because you're saying what we've said a lot. Caregivers need caregivers some days. Sometimes you need a caregiver for yourself.
Yeah. So we have the paid nurses who we're set up with. If we kind of fall short and we need some extra support, there's a few, it's not so easy to find someone who's trach vent certified. And that's the difference.
Yeah.
Right. I can't leave my daughter with just anyone. It's a big weight to carry. It's not just that physically her weight when, the weight of all her supplies when we want to go travel to family affair or something.
Yeah.
It's just, we can't leave her with anyone. So, I have a friend who used to come at the beginning. She was more available. She used to take care of a trach vent patient, and she would come on a Wednesday when I didn't have a nurse in the morning and help out. We do not have any family members who are trach vent certified. Maybe someday I'll find a sibling or niece, or, someone who is passionate about it, but we don't really have medical professionals in our home in our family in that way who are eager to learn that. We try to keep my son not super involved. I don't want him to feel the responsibility of having to save my daughter's life. That could be really hard.
Yeah.
So we help him, if he wants to reconnect something and we're around, we'll say, you want to run up and do it, but we don't really want him to feel the burden there. And then there's a few a few community members, one who works in the hospital where my daughter sometimes gets admitted, which is really, really nice. But it's pretty lean on that in that end, because there's not many who are trained. But I will say that we have family members coming in to help with carpools and different things like
that's also care. Yeah.
Which is really, really helpful if we need it. If my daughter would hypothetically get admitted or do different things, we could call them and they'd be here.
Yeah. And I think that it sounds like you're really managing a team. And you're managing the group and coordinating care for your daughter, but also for the children, for the family. You're coordinating life. There's feels like a lot of scheduling and trying to allowing for those surprises.
But you built a beautiful life. That thing has slowed you down, Rachel, and I love that about it.
I think, and I want to go into some of the questions, because let's go into sister questions.
Are you ready?
I am super ready.
So you said something, my question is, you said that, your daughter is on life support, basically, and that she is medically fragile, and that touched me. What does your future look like, Rachel? What do you see for you all?
A good question. I'll tell you, my husband called up someone who has a trach vent child who's about 13. It's their only child, and my husband said, "How do you cope?" And he said, "I only take it one day at a time." And I know it sounds so simple, but it's true. Like, I could sit here planning and thinking about what will be, but I really don't know. I mean, maybe we have plans to hopefully have her come off a trach vent, the trach at some point. Maybe not tomorrow, but it's not out of the question. Her team is working on that at some point. So maybe that will look different. Honestly, I'm thinking about like tomorrow, and if I could get respite care at some point to go, on a break at some point. That's kind of my near future, what I'm thinking about.
Yeah.
But I don't think about forever and always what that looks like, because listen, I'll tell you, we were blessed to do construction on our home, and we customized all the plans. 2 months after we started, or really right as we broke ground, my daughter had her stroke. Everyone sees our home. There are steps going up. There's a lot of steps around. And everyone's like, what are you going to do with this house? I said, if I was meant to customize my home to my daughter's needs, I think God would have arranged it so the stroke happened like right before, when we did the plans. Like, that's no fluke, right? That's crazy. We had the opportunity to customize plans and we just didn't. So for now, we're not. We put a ramp in the backyard, but I'm not thinking about it just yet. She's only 3.5.
Yeah.
Again, I don't think about like 20 years ahead, but at some point I may have to move. Right? What does that look like for my home that can't necessarily accommodate my daughter in the perfect way?
Yeah.
It might not be, it might be a luxury to accommodate her in a perfect way, but I might try if I can at some point.
Yeah.
I think there's a couple of things that you had mentioned to us, because we had asked you about, hey, what are things? And I feel like we've hit on a lot of them, but there was one thing that you said that struck me. And I think it's the opposite of what I think most people would say. And you said, my personality is not to rely on anyone. And that was the first thing we started with, and assume people will cancel. It might be pessimistic.
Emphasis on the rely.
Yeah.
I love when they show up.
Yes. Well, and I think that's the point. And I think the part that I liked is how you ended it. So having low expectation and being surprised has helped me. Tell me a little bit more about low expectations and being surprised.
So, I have family members, when I tell them, oh, can you believe it? A nurse, canceled for today, maybe for a good reason. Maybe they were sick or whatever the case may be. They're like huffing and puffing on the phone, right? They're upset for me. And I appreciate their sincere, condolences for my nurse not coming home, and I'm dealing with whatever I had going on that day.
Right.
But I'm like, you know what? I always kind of expect it, not because I don't rely on caregivers. It's just, I cope. It's a coping mechanism. I am totally fine. I mean, it's upsetting, but I can move on. And that's just how it's been, right? I think I rely on friends and family and those a bit more. Maybe it's just the nature of relying on things related to my daughter, because if a family member says they're coming to pick up your kids to take them to a party, I would be upset, right? Or different aspects related to that. And family does show up. They say they're coming, they'll be there.
Mm-hmm.
But I think related to the help and just the nature of caregiving and the hired help, right?
Yeah.
I'm thankful that I am around, and on days when a nurse cancels, I said, okay, you know what? I'll get to give my daughter extra kisses today. Like I just
Perspective.
Maybe I've been too busy that week and I get to, focus on her, but it's hard. It's just, I don't want to sit there and wallow and have to change all my plans because I assumed that someone was going to show up. So I do have a lot of people I can rely on, but I don't know. I err on the side of caution to protect myself, maybe.
Well, and I think it's part protection, but it also allows you to roll with it. And you're not going to spend a lot of energy on things that won't serve you. And
That's a good way.
And, I think that is fine in it, because you're right. People could sit there and be like, why me? Why do I have this? And you could say, well, they're not going to show. And I don't hear you saying, well, they're not going to show up anyway. It's not about that. It's really about like, life happens. My child had a stroke at 1.5. So things unexpected will happen, and I'm going to be okay with it. I'm going to make sure that I'm okay with it, because it will happen. It's not that it will never happen. And I think it's just a shift in the lens of how do I manage it goes back to the chronic unpredictability. There is a lot of unpredictability every day. And so at least for yourself, you're able to say, I'm going to be okay with this, no matter what happens, good or bad. They show up, great. They don't show up, I'll deal with it. But I'm not going to melt down.
Yes. And I think that's the difference, because I always say this example, like my mother taught us all how to clean. Like if the clean lady doesn't show up, like, okay, we still know how to clean. And I know a lot of people rely on cleaning help, and I'm not the best cleaner, but we don't melt if our cleaning assistance doesn't show up. And I think I was always brought up with that mentality, right?
Yeah.
And then COVID hit, right? How many people were drowning once COVID hit and people couldn't show up to take care of their services? I think that's the mentality. And I like what you said, which is it's not with anger. It's not with anger that I can't rely on anyone. Yeah. I know I can rely on certain people for certain tasks, but life happens. Their car might break down, whatever the reason might be. That's the attitude that I have.
So very c'est la vie. Yeah. It is c'est la vie.
Yeah.
I have my last question.
Ready.
This is always my last question, Rachel, because I know JJ asked her questions. Do you have any other questions?
I'm good.
Okay.
I'm solid.
Just making sure.
Got it.
All right. Always want to be respectful of my elders. You're so welcome for that. That was free. That was a freebie at the end.
Yes, thank you.
All right, Rachel. People are going to be like, I definitely want to hear this one. What is your favorite guilty pleasure? What is the one thing that you do just for you? Because you got a lot going on, girl. What is the thing that you do for just you that is just for you?
If I have the day, I will go out by myself to the outlets and shop. I don't even need to buy anything, but I just need the day. It doesn't happen so often. I did it for my birthday in September last. So, hope it doesn't wait until next September. But in the interim, there's bits of just going outside and catching some Georgia sun for a few minutes a day. I know it might sound funny, but sitting down and eating a proper meal during the day is a bit of self-care, because I'm working and I sometimes, and it's not always, but most days I do have coverage for my daughter, but it's like getting the time to have a proper meal. And just time for myself. Sometimes I do just run out on different errands. And if I'm by myself and have the luxury to do so, I'm not completely strapped at home, but if I have time to do something that's like going to the mall for an hour, like things that normal people can do, maybe or maybe not. People are busy in life, right? But those are the things that just make me feel like, okay, I could just peruse a store and be normal. And,
Oh, yeah. I agree with that.
Gotcha.
I totally agree with that. Trader Joe's was my favorite. I would go to Trader Joe's and I would just peruse.
You didn't have to buy anything.
Did not have to buy. Ever. I didn't even need anything, but I went to Trader Joe's every day and perused and got to look at all the other people and people watch and wonder and just be like, I felt like everybody else.
Yeah.
Just like everybody else. And that's the best part about everybody else is you have no clue what's going on in their life. And so this has been so wonderful, Rachel.
You have such a beautiful story, and thank you for sharing it.
Absolutely.
Thank you for sharing with us first, because you said you'd never shared the full story, and it is beautiful. And
this may be the one and only until my husband decides to write another book. Who knows?
Oh, yeah.
But your attitude about everything that's the most beautiful part about it, and that it's not slowed you or your family down. You've created a beautiful life, regardless of the circumstances. You just roll with it, and you've created something amazing.
She's living an and life.
That's exactly right.
And this. I'm going to be, this is hard, and I'm going to get through it.
Yeah.
And so I think you're an inspiration and just a blessing, and I'm grateful to know you. So
thank you.
Guys, thanks so much for joining us and listening in. And until we confess again, we'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Well, friends, that's a wrap on this week's confession. Thanks so much for listening in to the podcast. But before you go, please take a moment to leave us a review and tell your friends about the Confession Show. Don't forget, visit our website to sign up for our newsletter, as well as connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Pinterest, and Twitter. You'll also find the video recording of all our episodes on the Confessions website and our YouTube channel. We'll see you next Tuesday when we come together to confess again. Till then, take care of you. Okay, let's talk disclaimers. We are not medical professionals and are not providing any medical advice. If you have medical questions, we recommend that you talk with a medical professional of your choice. As always, my sisters and I at Confessions of a Reluctant Caregiver have taken care in selecting the speakers, but the opinions of our speakers are theirs alone. The views and opinions stated in this show are solely those of the contributors and not necessarily those of our distributors or hosting company. This podcast is copyrighted and no part can be reproduced without the express written consent of the Sisterhood of Care, LLC. Thank you for listening to the Confessions of a Reluctant Caregiver podcast.